Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you're joining us from around the world, it's time for another set of six. I'm Adam Collins, and tonight we are visiting the beautiful country of Switzerland to talk to two of our major players over there, the Youth Development Coordinator, James Weston, and also the Ladies Opens coach, newly appointed Rebecca Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining us, guys. It's great to have you on board for a set of six.
Great to see you. Thanks for being up so late for us, Adam. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, and again, a pleasure to let the world in, and know a little bit about Touch Switzerland and what you guys are doing over there. First of all, I might just get you to give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and how you became involved in the sport. I'll start with you, Jim. Tell us a little bit of the Jim Weston story.
Oh, thanks very much. I suppose my story with Touch started when I was in Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong for about 5 years, and I was playing rugby out there. And Touch was quite a new thing in Hong Kong at the time, and we got ourselves together a team, and we played in the I think the inaugural Asian Championships, which was 2002, which we won. There weren't many teams playing at the time, but it was a really, really good fun event. And I just thought, what a brilliant sport this is. Came to Switzerland in 2008, and there wasn't a great deal of touch going on then. Couldn't really find out where to play touch. So being very selfish and wanting to play, I set up my own club, which is in Zug, which is just outside of Zurich. And because I was a coach for the mini rugby, we got a number of the coaches involved. We started getting kids involved playing touch as well, and it's kind of developed from there really. And then Swiss Touch has grown and grown over the last few years, and is doing exceptionally well now. It's a great fun bunch of people, and we love it over here.
That's awesome. And Rebecca, what about yourself? What's the Rebecca Fitzgerald story?
Yeah, so I'm originally Scottish. And I actually came to Touch a little bit later on. I think I was the age of 27, and I think I share a really similar story to probably a lot of people out there, in the fact that a friend invited me to come down and get involved one night. And yeah, I came down and I absolutely loved it. I'd always been involved in sport. I'd never even heard of this game before, though, and I think just the combination of the speed, the agility, and the strategy was super engaging. And that was back in 2009. I think, the following summer I was lucky enough to be selected into the Scotland squads and got my first cap for Scotland in 2010. I think it was at the Bristol Euros. Since then, I've been a women's open player through and through. And, I've just been delighted with the opportunities and experiences it's given me. It's taken me to the World Cups, to the Euros. I think probably some of the biggest passions that kept me playing were meaning not only playing with, but playing against some incredible touch players. I've actually been coached by some fantastic coaches throughout the years. Actually Robbie McKenzie, who had just recently had that amazing success with the Scottish Mixed Open, had in Malaysia with the bronze medal on the Mixed Open. He was actually my first coach, and that kind of set the bar. I had a lot of very good coaches after that going forward. And I should mention, actually, one of those was my now husband. I better not forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. A great husband, but a better coach, or
no comment.
No comment. I like it.
But
that's
that really
awesome.
Got me into it. I mean, it's one of those things that I've then lived in the Netherlands, lived now in Switzerland, and it kind of just keeps you. Yeah, it's a great, I guess, integrator into those communities. That's what got me started.
Wow, that's awesome, and it's great to hear those stories, those personal touches as well. And just, I think it's like you said, it's a common story. You just go down with a friend to have a go, and the game, the bug bites you, and off you go. And
yeah.
the beauty that you touched on there about the friendships and the camaraderie, not just in your own team, but the players that you play against. And you talk about the World Cup, it's like, homecoming, where everybody just sees each other again, and you might be rivals on the field, but the camaraderie off the field is certainly an aspect of our game that we all love. So thanks for sharing those insights into what got you involved. And of course, it brings us now to where you are with those titles against your name, but the development that you're putting back into the sport. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I just want to touch on the COVID situation. Tell us a little bit about, and the people around the world, what's happening over there in Switzerland and how it's actually affected, obviously, the greater community of Switzerland, but the touch football community as well.
I think it's been a pretty tough time, obviously, for everyone around the world, and competitive sport has been one of the first things that's suffered, I guess. From our perspective here, Switzerland's done a pretty good job at keeping kids in school. I think that's been really important. But in terms of sports, last year we were able to play touch, I guess, for about 5 months, which was brilliant, and we managed to do quite a few competitions within Switzerland. So that was great for the sort of development. But this year we haven't been able to do anything really since I think October was the last time we were able to do any touch. They've just introduced under 20s, so under 20s can now play touch and have been able to for about the last 6 weeks, and hopefully we'll open up again in the next few weeks for adults as well.
Okay. And what have you guys done during the shutdown period to keep your players engaged? Have you taken any measures to keep people involved?
There's lots of drinking games ideas that have been running around the clubs, and what we've tried to do is do some sort of fitness tests and that type of thing that you can do on your own or with a relatively small group of people, because you're allowed to mix in small groups. You got to sort of stay 1.5 meters apart. So that's been quite fun, and people have been really engaged with those sort of things. And now, even though because we can't be sort of 1.5 meters apart, what we're trying to do is just run through skills and just try and do skills within a small group and get a few small groups together, so that we're ready when things start again in a couple of weeks. What we've also done, I know we're going to come on to this, is things like ref courses, coaching courses, all online. And that's been hugely helpful, just in terms of the technical side of the game.
Yeah, awesome. We will touch on that. I just want to you talked about the under 20s, and we might sort of segue there into what's Touch Switzerland's approach been to developing the junior game and the youth side of the sport.
We've I suppose Touch Switzerland started very much at a relatively elite level straight away, and wasn't too focused on the junior side of things. What we've tried to do is work with the rugby community, and a lot of the clubs here are quite close to the rugby community. And obviously you have mini rugby, which is actually quite big in Switzerland, especially in the Geneva side. And so what we tried to do is actually bring some of those coaches and players, the young players, into the touch side of things as well. So I guess we've got about 50 junior players now. A lot of them are on this side, the sort of Zurich and Zug side of the world. And we managed to play in our first European juniors under 15s mixed in 2019, which was fantastic. And we really enjoyed that experience. We won one game. We beat Ireland on the first game. And that was just such an amazing experience for the kids and the parents and everyone who got involved in it. So, and Mike Abramovich was involved in the coaching on that, which was great. So he was hugely influential there.
And despite that, you won a game. That's awesome.
Yeah, despite that, we won a game. Exactly. Yeah.
Now the great man, Abro. I was just going to say, just while you're mentioning people like Michael Abramovich and Rebecca mentioned, a few other people along the way there. If you're watching here, I can see that there are people watching live online. Don't forget to get involved. You can throw a question up if you've got a question for the guys. If you want to make a comment, please engage with us. We can see those coming online, and we can throw those questions to Jim and Rebecca, who I'm sure would be more than happy to answer. But Jim, you touched on there the mini rugby aspect of it and getting players and coaches involved. What's the strategy to engage other sports in the sport of touch football? Do you find that people view the sport as a competition against their own sports, or are you pushing the message that it can actually help and assist development in those other sports as well?
We're exactly pushing that message. I think certainly on the rugby side of things, they've been very accommodative and very happy for us to get involved. They see the skills that kids learn and adults learn from a touch rugby perspective. They see the fitness as a huge benefit for rugby itself. And I think the players that come across, they suddenly realise how accessible it is. The fact that you can play with women and men together, you can play kids and men and women together. We have a number of families within Zug who play competitively together as a family. I mean, you tell me one other sport in the world that allows you to do that. I think it's an amazing sport, and the more people that get involved in it, the more they realise.
Yeah. So I might just throw to Rebecca here for this one. Rebecca, you said you came to the sport a little bit later in your life, and you didn't know the sport existed. If you had have had this sport back in your youth, can you see yourself, in a different place now?
Oh, husely. I think it would have been incredible to have been playing a lot earlier. We actually have, my husband and I have 13 nieces and nephews who are all across in Australia, and they are all been and starting to play since they're knee-high to a grasshopper, and seeing the skill base that they have, the variation of different ages is just incredible. And then you watch that progression. I mean, my husband, he was the same. He grew up in Australia, and I guess coming in at 27, I wish I could have knocked 10 years off of the clock. I don't know if I necessarily would have been any better, but I think it took me, I certainly was one of those players that whilst the athletic nature of it came intuitive to me, the strategic nature of it didn't. I wasn't able to read the game as quickly as perhaps anybody else had been playing. I mean, some people, it blows my mind. They say it so quickly. And it took me sort of quite a few years to begin to learn that. And yeah, absolutely, I think is the short answer to your question. Had I been able to pick it up when I was younger, I would have been really excited to have seen what it could have done. And I think that's why what Jim and what the guys doing here and trying to really get that grassroots level touch engaged and bring the juniors on is it's so important. I mean, it pushes all of us out of the different places as well. It makes places competitive on the national touch teams, which I think is critical and a really important progressive part of the development.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, and taking on the, putting the hat on now as the ladies opens coach for Touch Switzerland. Do you see a real push coming from younger players to make their way into in the opens ranks?
Yeah. So first off, I mean, I've just really come on board and been more formally involved over really the last year, I would say. And the best reflection I can give you to answer that question is, so in between the periods of lockdown, we were actually able to get out and play the first ever regional tournament, which was incredible. It never for men's open and for women's open. And first off, what was really exciting is that was a tournament really driven by the women. They were looking first and foremost for more domestic touch. They had been inspired, I think, by some successes across sort of some of the competitions. And they actually were the drivers of that competition. And what was fabulous is the progressive thinking of Touch Switzerland meant that they really listened to those players and enabled it and gave an opportunity, and in doing so actually inspired the men. So the regional competition was incredible, and actually before going into lockdown again, it's meant that I think it's carried us a little bit with that that excitement. And to that point, I mean, specifically your question, what about the younger players coming? I mean, Jim's club and what they're doing with the juniors is a perfect example. So not only when we played that tournament, I mean, we had incredible youngsters coming, and I think, Jim, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of those girls were sort of 15, 16. And just the level of enthusiasm that they had coming onto the field. And you can see those numbers in the training that Jim has been doing. Actually, I think specifically his wife, Tash, was coming back from injury, has put off an awful lot of time. And I think if we can continue on that pathway of bringing new players into the environment, exposing them, I think it's only set to improve and increase. And definitely some of the girls coming through at the minute, without a question of a doubt, will challenge those spots on the Women's Open.
That's awesome. And it's great to hear and see the passion that you speak about with that development and the progress of the women's game over there. So, yeah, it's it's something that happens, I think, the world over, that the women and the passion that they have for the game as they come into it and carry the game forward. So that's it's a great reflection that you give us there.
Absolutely. I mean, what I should say is, coming in at this stage, I think it is a reflection of actually quite a few years of a lot of different people working quite hard to generate some excitement within the women's game. And I think really that I think it kind of came a bit of a surprise, but as you correctly summarized there, that the women then actually, I think, have been the enablers, the driving force that has actually been able to bring all those different pots have been working together to make it happen. So it's really exciting. I can't wait to get started.
I can see that and hear it in your voice. It's outstanding. So great insight once again. So we might bring Jim. I was just going to say we'll bring Jim back in here now.
Yeah, sorry, just on that point, I mean, to see these girls develop over the last couple of years has been amazing, and to see the confidence it gives them then to go into a Swiss or a regional women's team and play well, and it's absolutely been brilliant. My wife's been heavily involved, Tasha, over the last year and a half, with the girls specifically, and she absolutely adores it. She loves to see girls coming through and then playing at a mixed level and then playing at a senior level, and just to see their confidence develop has been amazing. I mean, that tournament last year in October, which is actually the last time any of us played, was really special for me, just to see all the girls there. It was brilliant.
Yeah, perfect. And you mentioned, Jim, earlier on about the technical development that you've been undertaking out there. Now it's probably a good time to touch on that and just tell us what's been happening in that development space technically, and what are your plans for the future?
I think it's something that we definitely need to do more of. I think we've got to the stage where we probably have about sort of 500-600 players within Switzerland, but we don't have many refs. And we've got Matt Boson here, who's a great ref coach, and Peter Kaiser and Anna Thomas Schutzker as well, and a number of really good refs who are here. But we need to expand that. So we had a really good ref course a few weeks ago, which really helped us, and it just broadens the knowledge of the game. So even if you're not involved or want to be a ref, it's just great to know the rules. And quite a few people, they say they do and they don't, and so this sort of stuff is hugely beneficial. And actually doing it online is much easier than doing it in person, because you can get more people involved. So that's been great. And we've been running coaching courses in the last sort of COVID area as well. So we had a chat last week with the island nation of Kiribati, and they undertook the FIT online referees course and took it to the masses, and they explained what they faced technically and so forth, but they were able to get it up. So I think it's a great resource, and you touched on that, the ability to draw more people in and involve them to get their own individual places in that course and to learn at their own pace and so forth. Your point about the game developing itself, you need referees, you need coaches, otherwise the game doesn't prosper. If the game itself, the players accelerate at a greater level than the referees, it's going to stall at some stage. So that development technically is so important. It's a really difficult balance to get right, because everyone wants to play, but slowly but surely you start to realize that you can't play in every tournament or every game, and you need to have refs. So I think Anya and Peter particularly have done a great job in trying to expand that within the clubs, and I think we're all very aware of what we need to do. But on the other technical side of things, just having people like Abro come in, Troy Cameron came over from Australia a few years ago, Federico Black as well, who's an organizer. He organised a couple of the Euros. To have people like that with that level of experience, and now Rebecca coming as well, it's just fantastic, and it just adds to what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about, you talked about the youth development and what you're doing as a sport. How are you getting into the schools? Is that a particular focus that you're trying to achieve?
It's not that easy getting into the Swiss schools. So rugby. There's a lot of expats who play rugby here. There are quite a lot of Swiss who play rugby, but not many of the Swiss schools play rugby, and don't necessarily see that as a progression, therefore into touch. So for us, the main development, I suppose, has been going to the rugby clubs themselves and then getting in that way. Having said that, obviously we'd be delighted to do more work on the school side of things. We're starting to see more Swiss kids coming through and playing, which is brilliant, but it's still a pretty low level. Some of the clubs on the Swiss side are doing much better than others, and we can talk about that a bit later. But yeah, we haven't had a huge amount of support yet from the schools, but that's probably the next level for us.
Okay. So I guess one of the things that you talk about there, the schools don't really play rugby. It goes back to that complementary nature of the game that I spoke about. It's not just rugby that the game complements. We can see some of the images that you've got on there of some of the younger players, and that pictures like that just light up your face. It makes you smile when you see kids enjoying themselves, and even though they're only still shots, you can still see there that skill development that they've got going with that hand-eye coordination. So all of that lends itself to other sports. It's not just a rugby base, and I think that's something you need to take forward as we try to get the sport into schools, that there are so many other benefits.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, one great example of sort of kids and the development side of things is in the Geneva tournament last year. We in our club we had 2 13-year-olds playing at mids, running the adults, right? So there were adults outside them and 2 14-year-old boys in the middle playing mids, and they did such an amazing job. But the confidence that gave them to be able to run a game plan, which is their job to do that in a play. It was a plate competition, not the cup competition, but it was pretty decent level. It was just fantastic to see, and the more we can do that, the better, really.
I am quite hopeful that I think though that we should be able to get into the schools. I think to Jim's point, it's been challenging, but I've been involved also with Swiss netball over the last couple of years, and they actually suffered or struggled with a really similar challenge in the fact that it wasn't a sport that was known, and trying to break those boundaries down. And I certainly know that was a sport that I transferred from, and so I think it's something that there's loads of potential there, but it's for us to try and work out how do we get that access. I think again, as Jim quite rightly said, what the rugby program is core, and I think even last year there was already some discussions going on. And what's great is I do know that there are people who there are identified people that are able to go into schools and discuss sports, and I think that's definitely something that we need to work on to try and gain that access so that we can begin to run these programs, because I think it will only add to the grassroots program, the work that the people are doing at a club level, if we can really try and get it in on the curriculum.
And the federation has the Junior Touch Commission, so there are a lot of resources out there that we may be able to help with. So that's something that we can take on board, and our people talk to your people and offer whatever assistance we can get there, because it is such an important thing. I just want to go back to some of those photos that we just saw on the screen there. You're playing the white stuff. Explain that one for me.
Yeah, we generally we do sometimes in the winter time. I mean, there's a very famous tournament in Strasbourg which happens. It's like a Christmas tournament. It happens in sort of December, and Strasbourg's in France, but it's only about 2 hours away for most of us. And so we go down there, and generally you have to break the ice before you get out on the field. And there's often snow on the field, and you're diving in the snow and stuff, and it's just such a fun tournament, and everyone has a few beers afterwards. And it's a good crack, as you can see.
Oh, that looks amazing! And get the Zamboni out to prepare the fields. That's awesome.
What's a bit of a shame, Adam, is in Switzerland itself, they're so worried about the pitches that they won't let you play when it's snow. So even on Astro, which is meant to be all weather, a lot of them don't let it. So we don't get to play on the snow quite as much as we'd like to.
No, fair enough. And I think I saw a photo there of the Swiss master as well, Roger Federer.
Yeah. So we had a 40s team at the Euros a couple of years ago in Nottingham, which was such an amazing event, absolutely brilliant. And we had to think of what we were going to dress up in afterwards. And so all the 40s guys dressed up as Roger Federer and walked through Nottingham for the evening. It was very funny. I think there was about 16 or 17 of us all together. So
16 Roger Federers.
Abro's in there somewhere.
Looking the least like Roger Federer as anybody ever could.
Yeah.
Very good. That's awesome. And again, just to touch on something that Rebecca said earlier on, that camaraderie and that aspect of the game that just keeps people involved. It's things like that are, a measure of the game that we see the world over. So yeah, kudos to you guys. For,
well, I think one of the great things certainly about the Euros is that everyone has to dress up afterwards. So you play your game, and it's very competitive, and it's there's a few broken bodies at the end, but then you have a night out and everyone's dressed up and everyone has a good laugh. So there's a lot to be said for that. Yeah,
the social aspect of the game is still a driving force. That's great.
Legendary. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the junior development. Let's put on our more elite, I guess, cap. Where to for Touch Switzerland in the open and senior ranks and development of the game there? We'll start with you, Rebecca. I'd like to get your insight into the what you're planning to do with the women's opens.
Yeah, so I think, of course, we're all sort of under a little bit of tie of the COVID situation. Yeah. I think we really have to try and focus predominantly over what's within our control, or what's most within our control at the moment. And so I think, first of all, a little bit of walking before we can run. So really just getting people back out playing. I think getting people conditioned again to playing touch, because we really haven't. Yeah, nobody's really been on the field or sort of playing anything relatively structured of any time recently. And I think with that, Touch Switzerland have put in place a fantastic and actually probably one of the strongest yet sporting calendars for actually within Switzerland, which I think gives and creates a wonderful platform for our players to begin to build from. So I think the plan, and Jim, you can correct me if jump in at any point if I'm incorrect, but I think the plan as it stands just now is that we'll actually host again. We have our club championships, which we're looking to actually host 4 different rounds of that. But again, for the first time ever, I think really building on the success of the first ever regionals last year is actually providing a platform, a bigger platform, and actually offering 2 regional events. And that, I think, will be super interesting. And just making sure we've got those numbers, first of all, that participation amount, but also as we move into regionals, it's that reinforcement of, I guess, the selection criteria of a stepwise progression being offered for players that are interested to represent at a national and then hopefully on a European and international stage. Now, I know that that just recently, actually, it's super exciting, and it's lovely to see these teams coming out. The EFT announced that I think there's going to be the seniors taking place. I've got to get this the right way around. I think the seniors is it in Portugal, and I think the club championships coming up in Spain. And I guess that will be open up for discussion within Touch Switzerland as to what we do. And again, a little bit dependent on COVID, but I think really with the touching the women, I think it's really to make sure that those players are in, just to reiterate, I guess, to make sure people are in really good form, they're well conditioned, they're playing regularly, the basic skills. I mean, Abro and Troy spent a lot of time the last 2 years of running high performance workshops, ensuring that those, we call them the basics, but I would almost reterm them the essentials, because unless you've got them, you can't do anything with them.
Absolutely.
And I think carrying that through, so it's a moving landscape, but I think women's definitely stands an opportunity to be prioritized if we've got the numbers and the interest and the competitive nature is there. And I would love to see these women, I guess, run out on hopefully in Nottingham, looking even further ahead to Nottingham, I guess, to Euros 2022. Would really love to see a competitive women's team there. Doing incredibly well, and I would be as bold to say really challenging the top 4, top 5 nations. Again, it depends on the skill base of players we've got within that squad, but from what I see at the current situation, there is a lot of talent there. And I guess one of the beauties of being a younger nation is you don't really have so much fear of going on the field. You can go out there and you're a little bit of the underdog. And I think we should definitely jump on that and utilize that to the best of our abilities.
Oh, absolutely, and that's a really key point. Is the fact that you've got to set your bar high, like you mentioned there, to
Yeah.
take on the top 4 or 5. But you do it from a position where nobody expects anything from you, and you take that competitive juices that you have flowing and almost a carefree nature. What have you got to lose?
That's it. Absolutely. I mean, the girls had a couple of wins at different tournaments just playing, and it's amazing that mental attitude that breeds, that winning attitude, that expectation of yourself. The self belief is huge. I think Jim actually mentioned that off the back of like the regional tournaments, and it's been little things that have contributed to that. So I really hope that we can build on that. And I guess the world's our oyster, to coin a really overused phrase.
Absolutely. So, Jim, I guess you'd echo Rebecca's sentiments there, and give us a little bit of insight into what's happening in some of the other teams and the other age groups that you've got over there.
Yeah, so we've sort of developed a seniors team over the past few years, which has been a lot of fun. And we went to the Euros 2 years ago in Nottingham, as you say, as Roger Federer's, and we call ourselves the High Foreheads because everyone's losing their hair gradually. But it was such good fun, and we actually, I mean, to echo Rebecca's point, we actually did better than we expected. So we went in there with no expectation at all. There were 10 teams. We ended up coming fifth in the end, and we felt that was a pretty decent effort considering most of us hadn't played before 2 years before. So we're really excited about the next tournament. We were hoping it was going to happen obviously last year, then this year, and now obviously next year. But the problem is, a lot of us will be over 50 by then. So it's a question of where do we place ourselves within the tournament? But it's just wonderful to have a game which allows people of all ages to play. And we talked about juniors, which is great. We talked about opens and mixed and so on. But the fact that you can actually play all these age groups up to your 50s and even 60s is just amazing. So it's an honor to be part of this sport. It really is.
That's awesome. Where does the game fit into the sporting landscape over there? What are the sports that you're competing against or trying to draw from?
It's a really difficult one because Switzerland is very focused on probably 3 or 4 different sports. So ice hockey is obviously huge, skiing, football. Often they don't play sports in schools in Switzerland. So coming back to the point that you were making earlier about how do you get into schools, actually they don't do competitive sport in the schools. They do them in the clubs, in the villages and the towns and so on. So actually it's sort of breaking into it is quite difficult. What we found is getting pitches is hard. So Switzerland is not a big country. There isn't that much space because a lot of it is mountainous, as you know. And so you don't have many pitches in each village or town. So to get actually time on the pitch is not easy. And actually that's where the rugby clubs have been quite useful because they already have the connections with the local councils and so on. They can actually get us space on the pitch to be able to train, which for a while, certainly when I first started here, it was quite difficult to get that.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I guess, situation that not a lot of we're not used to here. I guess in a country like Australia, open plains and lots of playing fields and flat surfaces everywhere. That concept of if you drop the ball, it could end up, 10,000 meters down a mountainside isn't something that we really face here. So that's a really interesting insight or a concept for I guess a lot of countries around the world to take in and just know that that's the sort of thing you're up against in Switzerland.
Yeah, and you don't have many grass pitches either. So the main pitches that you would have would be Astro. And they're usually reserved for football. So whenever football's not playing, we get a chance to
sneak on
to get on there. But that's the sort of thing that happens certainly. But in terms of I mean, what I suppose you could talk about the development of the game in Switzerland and how things have changed. I mean, if you go back to sort of 2005, that's probably when touch started in Switzerland, and it was just a bunch of people who were throwing a ball around, and that became Geezers. There's a team called Geezers in Zurich, and they essentially represented Switzerland as well. So for a while it was sort of one team, and Switzerland. And then slowly but surely it sort of developed, and the Lakers came about in Lausanne, and then slowly but surely we got more and more of these teams coming through. We've now got 10 clubs across Switzerland, which is absolutely fantastic, and that's grown sort of exponentially the last sort of 5 years, I guess. And so we've got 500-600 players, whereas before we had maybe had 100, sort of 10 years ago. So you're definitely seeing that progression. You're also seeing Swiss people playing. So a great example is Bern, which is a club that only started probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it started out of the university. So Thomas Blazer, who actually learnt touch in New Zealand many years ago, sort of came over at university, got a load of Swiss athletes together, and they pulled together a team that actually won 2 years later. So they won the Swiss Cup 2 years later. So it just shows how the development can quickly change in Switzerland, which is brilliant.
It's a relatively short life of the game over there, and yet you've been at World Cups, and you talked about some of those people that have played an integral role in developing the sport to this point. You guys are the new faces, the new guard. What's the development aspects for Touch Switzerland over there? What are your international plans?
I suppose, shall I go first, Rebecca, and then you can chip in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose what's interesting is we kind of started when Geezers and Lakers were together, probably a couple of 2011. It was quite an elite sport in Switzerland. It was mainly expats, I guess. They went to the World Cup in Edinburgh, and the mixed team came 11th out of 25, which is an amazing result, really. And then they won the Mainland Cup in 2013. So it was very much a sort of elite sport at the time. And what we've done is we've kind of, I suppose, broadened that in the last sort of eight years to develop far more people playing the sport, and maybe the elite level has possibly suffered a little bit because of that. But from our perspective, we're very, very keen on getting as many people playing the sport as possible. More women, more kids playing, and that will then develop into the more elite levels. And the likes of having Abro there and Troy and Rebecca and so on involved is just fantastic, because they give us that technical benefit that we weren't necessarily getting before. So no, it's great.
The building of the grassroots is the most important thing. I mean, you can't sow a crop if you don't plant the seeds first. I guess that's that's the analogy that you've got to look at. And what you're doing now sounds like that progression is going to happen. And with people like Rebecca and, as you said, Abro and Troy on board, and those others that have come before them, it's the seeds that they sowed that you're starting to see now.
But I think going back to your question about how would we use it, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience and hope to have these discussions as the world opens up again with Touch Switzerland. But you know what, the most inspiring touch I ever played, I played World Cup my first year in, and to be exposed to the quality, the speed, the level of touch was exceptional. And the year after, I had the wonderful opportunity of going out to Oz and being involved firsthand with NTLs, actually alongside the CQ Bulls. And that's where I learned things like doing defensive dives and all these things that for so many people, they probably take it for granted. But I think there's something very special about keeping that international connection, staying, connected to how the big teams play, not only from a playing perspective, but also from a coaching perspective. I know so many people from both the playing and coaching, or both, that have gone across and spent times with some of the Australian clubs. I think the Mets, for example, is a great example. And just that foundation and layers of knowledge that they are able to share, and then you come back, and I guess both as a player and a coach, you come back, and a ref actually, sorry, as a ref as well, it's very remiss of me, you come back and it keeps that enthusiasm alive, and it really it drives you to step your level up, and I think that is seriously exciting, and there's such a good platform with the international comps and with more European comps coming through, and we've definitely got to try and take advantage of those again if we can. I mean, pre-COVID it was just coming in and knowing that you've got that preparation cycle. I mean, those 4-year cycles when when you're developing, and for a lot of for the bigger nations been playing longer, that's what it's all about. That's what you're building to, and it's invaluable. That's all I can say. So I hope we can get as much engagement with the international community, whether it's through sort of World Cups, Euros, or even going across and doing some partnerships or whatever with other clubs. I think that would be incredibly valuable to the development of Swiss touch.
Yeah, that, again, great insight and delivered beautifully too, to relate your personal experiences and how that's developed your game and how you want to take that back to the to the groups now that are coming forward, and that whole development progression. I know we've mentioned him a few times. We've mentioned Abro, and he's come across to Australia. He's, here in Australia, we say he's played at more clubs than Slim Dusty, who was a country musician here that used to play around travel around the country, left, right, and centre. And that's, just taking it to the people. And that's what Abro's done. He's been a sponge for the sport, and takes it back to wherever he is, and it's people like him, like yourself, like Jim, his own experiences, but putting back into the game, that keep this game alive. The one thing I want to touch on, and I think it's important, we've covered it in a few chats with other countries. I see developing nations watching the game in Australia, watching the game in New Zealand, and I guess from the European perspective, watching the English teams play and basing their own style on what they see on YouTube or what they see on live streams. But those countries have developed those games over a long period of time. So I think it's important that people like yourselves at the forefront of development in those countries, you've got to base your game on your skill set. Because if you try to achieve what the Australians and the Kiwis do too fast, you set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that when I was coaching South Africa, their mindset was so competitive that they expected to take on their first ever World Cup and win it. And then when they were confronted with the game that was very different to what they were used to playing, they were so shocked that I think we won one game in that first World Cup. But then they changed their mindset. They went, hey, hang on. We have skills that these guys don't have. Why are we trying to play against them with their own skill set when we've got this, we've got this little cannon in our back pocket that we haven't pulled out yet? So it's developing your own skills and taking that to the world, as opposed to trying to compete against the world with the game that they already play.
Yeah, like I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, one of the things my husband said to me when he was both coaching me and when he gives me counsel for the things I'm doing is touch actually is a simple game, and you can make it as complicated as you need to do it or not, but don't make overcomplicated if it doesn't. I think my own personal experience was, which I'm definitely bringing through with my coaching, is I've seen different patterns also. I've seen a lot of people not always understand why they're actually doing something. And I think sometimes that happens because, again, they're running it because it looks cool or whatever they see. I mean, you've got to build it. You've got to work with what you've got. You're 100%. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You've got to work with the skill set that you've got. And I think within that skill set, just to add to it, I think it's understanding why you're doing something. Because I know myself, there was a lot of times that I should have been braver. I should have been bolder and asked, actually, hold on a second. I've asked this 3 times already, but I want to be absolutely sure. And I think that is a huge take home, what you're both saying there, and also that why is a big take home of what I want to bring into the women's too. It's already being done. I know actually the work that Troy has done, with Jay and Fabienne had done, and Abra have been doing, but just to continue that. So it gives the players a chance, I think, really to, as you say, to adapt, to look up, to learn, to play their skill sets. I think the most important thing is actually to play what's in front of them with what they have, and I guess know why they're doing it.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100% it makes sense. And that's exactly what I was getting at, is to know why you're doing things. I've had it said to me as a coach when we've put up a defensive policy or an attacking play, and one of the players, so over here on the representative level, when I was coaching at a representative level, trying to combine players from 3 or 4 different strong clubs who all played with their own defensive policies, with their own. So when I tried to introduce a policy, I was told that's not the right way. Yeah. And I said, well, what makes it the right way or the wrong way? If we're all doing the same thing, that's the right way for this team. And it was based on the skill sets that we had, that you've got to make those judgment calls. But from a playing perspective, if you're not understanding it, you've got to ask that question. And the coaches have got to be able to provide the responses. And the responses are, we'll do what suits us and we'll make it the right way for our team. So, that's exactly that message that you were delivering there. Play to your skill sets, play to your own strengths. Don't worry about what the other teams are doing. You take your game to them. Challenge them to play your style.
Yeah.
Yeah. So perfect. We've had some questions come in, which is fantastic. Shout out to Pete Ryland, I think it is. He's talking about the Touch Switzerland peeps, and he mentioned that there are very few public parks. So just to echo there what Jim was saying in relation to getting on. But a good question coming in from Thomas B. Just, of course, giving you guys a wrap. First of all, great job representing Touch Switzerland. But the question here, having lived in a lot of countries, do you guys feel like team culture is different in Switzerland? And how that team culture can benefit the sport in Switzerland?
I think there's a lot of similarities, to be honest. With that, that's the beauty of touch is people come together. They want to play a great game. They want to be social. They want to access something special, and I think it really works well. One of the beauties of Swiss Touch is actually going to the Swiss Cup events and meeting people like Thomas and his team, like the Lakers, like Basel. We all come together. We all know each other really well. In the same way that you're talking about with the World Cups, but on a slightly lower level. It's just fantastic. And then to see the development of kids coming through and the support that someone like Thomas gives our kids and stuff is just brilliant, because they're seeing a level up from what they can achieve. And then they look to play to that, which is absolutely brilliant. So I think the atmosphere within Swiss Touch is great, and to be honest, similar to what I've seen in other places, but I suppose a smaller community compared to the UK or Hong Kong now it's quite a big sport there now, I guess. But that's my side.
And what about yourself, Rebecca? Have you found a similar?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe what I could add to that is I played in Amsterdam as well, and what I noticed there and here is there's a really good fun element of it, but I think what's been exaggerated here is, so when we're on the field and when we're also coaching, you're not just, it's less about the culture, more about the language. You're not just coaching in one, or you've not got a team that speaks one language. You have a team that is French speaking, German speaking. You may have some Italian speakers in there, and English. And whilst, what generally most of the coaching that I've been done is either in French or English, what I think it's great is you don't take it for granted. I mean, you have that risk, of course, that none of you knows what's going on. But I think it's enabled both myself and actually the ladies I've worked with is you make sure you're clear and you are understanding what's going on. I think it helps deepen that sort of non-lingual connection as well. I think you have to really read the player. And that's something, I mean, I would love to, the geek in me would love to research that more and more and more. But that's certainly something, I mean, I really appreciate. And when you're doing these and coaching these sessions, I mean, Thomas is an incredible coach himself. I think it's that patience and that time just to, go through it. And then it's that doing is so important, because I think then, it takes away the language clues, if you know what I mean. That for me has been super fascinating to watch that dynamic play into, and it's been delivered seamlessly. When people are running plays, it's never been a barrier, but I think there must be something there that people are subconsciously or even consciously making an effort to make sure that everybody has a common understanding. And that's quite special, actually. And I think that's one thing that maybe does benefit Switzerland, is we're not taking it for granted that like a call comes. I think everybody playing in that team has to do that little bit extra preparation to make sure they understand it at a greater or deeper level.
We've certainly seen that echoed in a lot of those other countries where the sport is very expat based. And a lot of the European countries, the Asian countries as well, Hong Kong, Singapore, those types of countries. And, you know, I have to say from somebody that's been involved in the sport since I could basically crawl, and to go back on to Jim's point, it's a sport that my family have been involved in since day dot in Australia. And my sister played at 3 World Cups. I've coached, you know, several countries and been involved at a grassroots level all the way through the game to an elite level. I see those countries and hear your experiences, and just I would relish that opportunity to be involved at that level. And having coached in South Africa and assisted the Japanese, it's that those challenges, and like you said, that geek in me would love to research that a bit more and really get to the bottom of it and you know, take that experience further. But you know, you guys are in a very enviable position, and I talked to Jim earlier about it's a relatively short lifespan for touch in Switzerland, but what you guys have done has been outstanding, and I look forward to seeing what you bring to the world in the future. Yeah,
I mean, there's some great stories in Switzerland about how some of the clubs have developed here. So I've got to take you through a couple of them. So one of them is the Panhandle Pigs in Egg, which is just outside Zurich, and our current president, Stuart Lewis, who's been doing a fantastic job for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. He arrived from Wales, I think, coming over to Zurich, wanted to play a bit of rugby or touch, went to the local rugby club and turned up on a Thursday, and they were all drinking and having good fun. And then he turned up the following Thursday, and they're all drinking and having good fun. and he said, so when do we play rugby? He said, no, we don't play rugby. We don't play. We just watch rugby and we drink. And so that went on for a while, and then finally he said, well, I tell you what, why don't we actually play something? And he decided to introduce them to touch. And these were all Swiss guys in a local town, and they've been absolutely fantastic. I mean, as people, they organise amazing events for us. You know, they're great players and great social, and just have a lot of fun. And that's just a great story of how Swiss touch has developed, where you have Swiss people who never knew anything about touch until probably 4 or 5 years ago, and now they're an integral part of what we do here. Yeah, great story. And I think around the world, that's something that's echoed. It's, you know, you have a field, you have a ball, and you have a sense of fun, you can play touch. Yeah. That's pretty much the bottom line. So we've had a comment come in from the great man. We've ribbed him enough. But Mike Abramovitz, that's a question for me. Yeah, that's for you, I think, Adam. I think you were saying how much you'd like to be involved. So when are you coming? Well, yeah, we might have to talk to Abro, the sponsor. He's got a spare room downstairs in his I'm sure he has. No, but it is those stories are what's beautiful about the game, Jim. And it's I've said it a couple of times, but what you guys are doing over there, and I can hear the passion in your voice and the stories that you tell, and I can relate to them and know that with people like you guys at the helm in touch, Switzerland is in a really good place, and you've got those other driving and the support people behind you there. So I look forward to, you know, touching base at an event sometime, you know, in the hopefully near future, if COVID can sort itself out, or if we can sort COVID out, and we'll meet up around the world at an event soon. So it's been a great insight having you guys on board tonight and having a chat. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully the touch world, as they come back to view this set of 6 episode, they'll learn a little bit more about Touch Switzerland. So I'm going to finish it by saying you've got 60 seconds to sell Touch Switzerland to the world. What do you want to tell everybody out there in the touch football world? How can they help? I suppose for us, you know, we got mountains, we got snow, which not many other people have, and we got touch, and we got a lot of people who absolutely love the game. So everyone is welcome, and we'd love to play more sort of tournaments with clubs and nationals, you know, coming our way. So it's great to be part of it, and we'd love to see more people coming over here to play us. Beautiful and well said. Rebecca, what's your elevator pitch? How are you going to get people, and what can we do for you?
I would start by saying we've got cheese, we've got chocolate. No,
sold.
Oh, that's it. No, Jim touched on it. We've got 4 amazing seasons here. We had, although limited facilities, we have the facilities generally are incredibly high level, and we are getting the support, as Jim we mentioned throughout the broadcast, of rugby clubs really embodying and taking on board touch, not only as a warm-up sport or whatever, but actually as a sport with its own identity. And I think anybody that's passionate, wants to travel, wants to get involved, wants to work with developing players, wants to bring something, you would be very, very warmly welcomed and hugely respectful. And I think a very gracious community would be delighted to have you come play with us.
Yeah, I'd have to say all the Swiss people that I know, that sums them up perfectly. So there you have it, everybody out there in the touch football world. The open arms of Touch Switzerland extended to you. And, a final note there, just thanking us for bringing it to you. It's been our pleasure, BNI Capital. So thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Set of Six. We're going to wrap it up there. You've heard from Rebecca and Jim. Touch Switzerland awaits. Please get on board. Anything you can do to support these developing countries, and as they look to bring the sport that we all love to the world. I look forward to catching up with Rebecca and Jim somewhere around at a fit event in the future. And thanks again for bringing that insight about touch in Switzerland and the development of the sport that we love. So, ladies and gents, that wraps up another Set of Six. We'll have an episode for you coming next week, I believe. I'm not sure where we're going to pop up, but I'm looking forward to the conversation and to just bringing the sport that we all love to your lounge room or wherever you're watching. So thanks for joining us for a Set of Six. Bye for now.